Famous because our green, all the beautiful animals and biodiversity that we have, and we're very proud of that. You are very welcome to my country whenever you want to come. So I'm so honored to be here with all of you. Thank you, Pavel, for bringing me, for making all this effort. All Pavel's team has been amazing doing all this possible. So this is so nice and so amazing. And this is the first time I am in Bangladesh. So, and I feel so honored. You have been so nice with me. So thank you very much for having me. I was asked to talk about peace building today. So let's do it. Yes, please. Okay, probably talking of me. I just wanted to give you a little bit of context and why I was talking about peace building and civic dialogue with you. So I'm a social and arts entrepreneur. And why this is important because I believe arts is a great way to create peace and to make understanding between people. And I've been working with that over 10 years making strategies and artistic products so we can have new narratives and new ideas with people through arts and culture. So this is why I do films and theater in my country, and I do that next to social enterprising. So this is why I'm talking about this today. And I was a former public servant for a while. I was managing the National Theatre Company in my country. And over there, we did some experiments with peace building activities through arts and culture. So this is why I want to talk a little bit precisely this. So right now, for example, we're doing a festival in Costa Rica for refugees for the World Refugee Day. So we're trying to change the narrative around refugees in our country. So this is why we're making 2 weeks, no, 3 weeks, a festival using arts and culture so we can celebrate all that refugees bring to our country. So this is what I do every day. Okay, next one. Okay, so I was asking who knew Costa Rica. So I wanted to bring you some context. So that's the American continent. And over that side circle, you can see Costa Rica is a very small country in Central America. So we are the bridge that unites North America with South America. And I love that because bridges unite things. And I really like to think about our country as a bridge to unite our continent and Central America especially. Next one, please. Okay, so I wanted to say 3 things important of my country that I think are very important for today's talk. We don't have an army since 1948. We had a president that he was not president at the time. He made a war. He just collected some people, and we had a 30 days war. And then they decided to abolish the army, so we don't have army from a long time ago. My parents don't remember to have army because they're younger, and of course I don't know what to have an army means. All the budget that used to go to the army now goes to access to education for everybody. This is why we have very good access to education. And because Costa Rica was key in the negotiations for the peace building in Central America. In the 80s, we have so many wars in El Salvador, Nicaragua, Honduras, and Costa Rica was one of the key countries to resolve that problem. So I wanted to say that about my country, and of course, the importance of us to be a bridge again in our continent. Next one, please. So I have a very okay for you. So I want you to raise your hand if you like vanilla ice cream. Vanilla ice cream? Okay, good. If you like chocolate ice cream. Okay, more chocolate here. Okay, okay, I'm in between. Okay, so if you come from a rural area, if you grew up in a rural area, can you raise your hand? Okay, good. Can we, okay, so raise your hand if you come from a rural area again. And I want everybody to just look around. Who comes from a rural area and you recognize yourselves? Okay. Who comes from the city? Who grew up in a city? Okay, we have less people from the city. Okay, good. Raise your hand if you think that we can have more gender rights. More gender rights? Raise your hand if you think that we could have more. Okay. Raise your hand if you feel that climate crisis is an issue. Okay, look around. Just look around. Good. Raise your hand if you feel that you cannot say your opinion freely. Okay. Just you can. Okay, you can look around. Good. Raise your hand if you're worried about the economic situation of your country. Look around. Raise your hand if you're worried about getting a job. Raise your hand if you think that your country can be a better place for everyone. Okay, look around. Okay, next one. So we are all kind of the same. So some of us like chocolate ice cream. Some of us are really worried about gender issues, worried about climate crisis. Most of us are really worried about getting a job. We're really worried about our country's economic situation. We're really worried about having a better country for everyone. All right? So I wanted to have that common ground today to start this talk. Okay? Next one. So yesterday, the team of this amazing event took me to a very important place for all of you. And I found this quote, and I wanted to just reflect a little bit of where you come from, and of course, maybe you have heard it before. I want to declare in clear and unequivocal terms to ours will be democratic, secular, nationalist, and socialist country. The farmers and the laborers, the Hindus and the Muslims all live in happiness and peace. So we're all different, but we want all the same. We want to live in happiness and peace. And that was said by the founder of this nation. Right? Okay, next one. So the concept of peace is an instrument for social and political transformation. And so many leaders have been talking about this here in my country. We're so far away and we have so much in common. We're looking for peace. And since years ago, thousands of years ago, we're talking about how to find happiness. That governments should look for happiness for people. And governments should look for the well-being of every person in the country, right? And peace becomes that tool that we can make transformation for social and political issues. So one of the first things that peace building requires is listening. And who has trouble listening here? I'm gonna raise my hand. I don't know who else has trouble listening. I have really big trouble listening because they don't teach us to listen. They teach us to listen when we want to listen. And listening is key to make peace because it requires that we have to just be silent and actively listen to the other person and try to understand where they're coming from, right? So that's the first step. Most important thing and the hardest thing to do. I've been training my listening skills for years. I'm not perfect yet, but I'm getting there. because it's not easy. If you see everybody, maybe when you're talking to somebody and somebody's with their cell phone, they're not listening to you. Do you feel that they're listening? No, right? So listening is not only just being there. In Spanish, we have two different words for listening. For active listening, we have a word, and for listening, we have a word. I don't know if in Bengali you have that. You have only one word, but in Spanish we have two. One means that you're really listening, and the other one is like, well, yeah, you kind of listen that is something is going on, right? But you're not deeply paying attention. So in Spanish it's easier too. We will say active listening when you're really engaging with the other person. You're really listening without judgment. You're just listening. Next one. So I wanted to bring you like 4 things to cultivating solutions together, which is kind of the core of peace building in every country. This theory comes from different theories. And I added one that is my favorite, but I will go through it with you. So, to know the situation, before listening for something, we need to know what's going on. This is why the listening part is so important, because we need to know what's the real situation. We will see each one in detail. Then, just hold a collective vision. How do you do that? Well, when we talk to each other, when we talk without judging, we can create a vision together. So I saw a lot of people raising their hands when we were saying that we wanted a better country for everyone. And that's a vision. That whole thing is very simple, it's a vision. And that vision can be grown, and you can make it grow and build up on that vision. Number 3 is change the narrative. And that is so powerful, and this is something that is happening right now. Changing the narrative, what Alapon is doing, is trying to change the narrative. So all the questions that Pavel was doing about who was who was in some time feel discriminated by their religion, the color of the skin, or how they look. In changing that narrative, it's one of the parts to make peace building. And then the last part, and the most difficult part, is to make change happen. But we have many examples in the story, and you have in the history, and you have a lot of examples in your own country. Next one, please. So, know the situation, and that's the listening part, the most difficult one. So, we have to make a difference between facts, perceptions, and history. So, facts are things that are like that. And we have here a journalist. Where is Mr. Mishu? Oh, here. He deals with facts every day. Every day. And then there's the perceptions that is not the same as facts. But because perceptions had to do with me and the way I see the world, right? Those are 2 different things. And then the history, of course, who have the power writes the history. So, again, careful with that. Again, and then one very important thing to do peace building is to know this, and I learned this last year, is knowledge is in the room. That means that the knowledge is here with all of you. You all hold knowledge. And that's very important to be aware of. Sometimes we just go crazy going outside, but the knowledge is here, and we can build it in a collective way. And then one of my favorite questions when I don't understand something and I want to understand a situation is, I don't know how would you say this in Bengali, but it's tell me more. When somebody tells me that, oh, I don't like chocolate ice cream, it's awful, right? I say like, okay, tell me more about that. What happened with chocolate ice cream in your life, right? I want to know more. with curiosity, without judgment. So I've been applying the "tell me more" phrase in the last year maybe, and sometimes people feel afraid to say what they think because they're gonna feel judged. Social media now is really cruel, right? You say something, they are going to cancel you. But instead, if somebody says something that can be hard to understand, you just say, "Tell me more about it. I want to understand." Right? And so knowing the situation goes to sometimes statements need more background. And it is nice and it is important to ask for that background. Next one. And this is very important, and it's a little bit like what I was saying before. Every member of the community hold pieces of the solution. So if you're dreaming for a better country, if you're really worried about climate crisis, the solution is in the room. The knowledge is in the room. And probably every person has a part of the solution. How can we make that part of the solution come out? Next one. So after we understand the situation, we can hold a collective vision or create a collective vision. What does that mean? Well, if it is my worries about climate crisis, what is the vision of a world? I won't say that don't have climate crisis because the climate crisis is already here. But what is the vision of a world that is resilient and that is inclusive with all, despite the climate crisis, and we can work together despite the climate crisis, right? So holding that collective vision can make, huge, huge movements. And you have again the story, your history that backups how to create a collective vision. Something that is very important with the vision and with the perspectives, it's the concept of a window. There are windows that are square, there are windows that are round, there are windows that are really small, there are windows that are only like this, right? So with that window, in every window, I would see a different world because it's a different frame. So every person has a different window, has a different frame. And that makes a difference when we talk. Because when we hear that somebody hates chocolate ice cream, it's because of the frame or the window. I have to understand that my window or my frame is different from the other people's window. So how can we understand that there are different windows and we can work around those different windows and we can see different parts of the world in other people's eyes and co-create together? And this is very important. It's a very, I think that concept has been, the last 10 years that at least in the Western world is very popular. Everybody talks about co-creation. I don't know if here happens the same, but it's like a trending topic. And it's about how we can create solutions together. So there are studies that say that when you go to a community and you make, let's say, you make like an art, a mural. You make a mural and you make art there. So when you get people involved, people won't damage it because they were part of it, and now it's part of the community, and they will take care of it. So co-creation is very important because it gives you, you feel like you're part of it, and that thing is part of you, and you're gonna next one. And the vision map, right? And that map that is like a pirate map, is like, oh, you will have to find a way to get there, and sometimes you're gonna have dragons, sometimes you're gonna have mountains, and you will have to go together. And if you go together, it's gonna be easier. So just try to think that even though you have a vision and the map looks a little bit rusty or difficult to advance in, um, it's part of the journey. And if you do it together, holding the vision, it's easier. Next. Yeah. Because peace building is a collective effort. And this is so important. I cannot be the only person who wants peace or wants to have good dialogue, civic dialogue, because you need more people for that. So it's not individual. None of this is individual. And this is very important because we will have to stop seeing us as individuals and start seeing us as a collective. So everything I do can have an effect on the person that is next to me. So how can we just build together? And who are we building with? Are we building only with the people that thinks just right the same as I think? Are we able to build with people that think different? Can we have the tools to listen to people that have different points of view and find that common ground where we all, one solution so we're not so worried about the economic situation of our country? How can we build those even with the different people? And that's a question I don't have an answer. So because it's really, really, really hard. Next one. Change the narrative. That's my most favorite thing. So when you have a vision and you say like, well, maybe that's too far away. It's impossible. It's a too big. The dream is too big. Well, you start changing the narrative. You start, maybe the work can be different. Maybe we can work together to fight climate crisis. Maybe we can work together to find solutions so the economic empowerment of my country is not so bad. Or maybe we can find a solution so we're not worried about, work, having a job, because when you're in the university, you're really worried about getting a job. And I was exactly the same. And I was studying arts. So believe me, I was so worried about having a job because my parents would say, you won't get a job doing that, right? And probably some of the majors that you are in, it's gonna be hard to find a job. So how can we work together for that not to happen? Change the conversation. And this is one of the things that when people say like, oh no, you're dreaming too big, or that is not even possible, let's change the conversation. Just let's give it a try. How can everything be different and how can we make it happen? Next. And if we want to change the conversation, we have to be the first bringing the good news and saying, no, this is possible. Just look for examples. And I always say, look for examples even in your country or outside your country, because you always will find an example that is possible. Sometimes it's hard to find, but sometimes you find it. So look for an example and bring me good news. And just you have to be the first one. And it's so hard to be the first one, to be the innovative one. But the innovators find other innovators. And then you can get together again. Next one. Changing the conversation means changing the content of what we speak.